Welcome back, and thank you for continuing with us as we cover Black Hat 2024. I am Mandy Logan with Security Weekly and Cyber Risk Alliance, and here with me is Boaz Barzel, the Technical Evangelist and Director of Enablement at Ox Security.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. You're very, very welcome.
Yeah.
So today we want to focus on AppSec, right? This is what you have gotten, it was what Ox Security has gotten all their fingers into and is really interested in helping. And this is becoming increasingly important. I am curious first about, you're discussing navigating the path to maturity for AppSec.
Right.
Can you give a quick summary of like what the state was and where it is going on maturity for AppSec in general?
It's a good question. Really, from a maturity standpoint, what we were seeing in the past is a lot more focus on discovery and bringing tools to help us discover security issues, vulnerabilities within the code. As if we even go further back, application security was mostly around applications that are actually running. There were little aspects of code analysis.
Okay.
But today, with all the development increase, agile methodologies, we're seeing that companies are shifting their gaze more to the code, to what's coming into the application. And now that developers are releasing code on a weekly, sometimes even daily basis, we see that it becomes very challenging just to have those vulnerabilities listed for you.
Okay.
So from this perspective, what we're seeing is that now the next area of maturity for most companies is generating context, not just the ability to create coverage, but also the visibility and context to help them prioritize in an automated way, and not spending days or week just manually going through the vulnerabilities, trying to decide which one of them is critical. How many hours I can get from development to remediate and fix vulnerabilities? So I think this is really the next level where we're going to see Ox Security, for example, as providing that level of prioritization, consolidation, and really giving you those critical security issues that once developers fix, they fix the root cause, and then behind the scene actually fixes a lot more vulnerabilities.
Okay.
So this is kind of the next level of evolution for most companies, and companies that already have that are building their automated response protocols that you can also, of course, do with Ox.
So in that, are you telling me that the advances in maturity actually are part of a move towards secure by design?
That's a good framework to use.
Okay.
There's a few more that you can use, but eventually, yes, we want to have a framework that helps us understand everything from the design phases through where development are writing the code, choosing what open source to use, for example. Maybe we can write different types of modules that help sanitize input, for example. So if there is a vulnerability, we're already mitigating that even before starting to code the application. The problem is that today applications are built on a lot of services. So micro pieces that are building a whole application in contrast to how it was built previously. So it's really it's different, but it's difficult. And the complexity of it means that just using a framework, that's probably good, but companies already have so many security issues and vulnerabilities, and their backlog is huge. And it's a risk they already have right now. So using a framework, like Secure by Design or Salsa or NIST or any one of those will help in the long run, but the focus should really be in understanding their current posture.
Okay.
And focusing on the risks and vulnerabilities that they need to fix. And one of those, frameworks that can use is Oscar as an example. Oscar really takes the maturity to the next level with application detection and response, converging into that space of application security testing, software supply chain security, and ASPM. And when you put everything together, you finally get a real picture of how exposed you are, what of not just the critical areas to fix, but also how attackers are looking at your vulnerabilities and what they can do. And then you can start understanding really the current security posture, start handling that, eliminate the manual AppSec through, for example, no-code workflows that we're providing. And then you have time to start looking at strategic programs and long-term programs, implementing those frameworks to start reducing the future risk.
Which I think is what we all want.
Yes.
Right? We want to have the Minority Report ability to like predict and handle it ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good reference.
Going back to Oscar, I want to confirm that is the Open Software Supply Chain Attack Reference.
Exactly.
Right? And in your experience with Ox so far, when you're looking at the industry, what percentage of organizations either have a dedicated AppSec person or team, or do they not need it? Like, how many organizations really don't have to deal with AppSec?
I don't think there is an organization, maybe 5%, that don't develop software. Software is what everybody's doing. You can see even manufacturers that, the big companies, shoe companies, car companies, they're all software companies eventually. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what they do relies on that software. Even their own optimizations and internal processes is software based. So I would say almost every company in the world right now develops software. Because they're developing software, they're now turning their gaze into application security. We're seeing more and more companies having that position in the organization, and even other types of positions that are complementary. You can see product security coming from development side in a lot of cases. You see DevOps and DevSecOps integrating security into the different areas of the pipeline. So you're starting, and we're seeing that today, and the market is growing exponentially. All the statistics, all the reports indicate that it's phenomenal. And this is why we're seeing that once we got network security, endpoint, cloud, it's already a commodity. Now they're looking and shifting their gaze even more to the code, and they want to fix something before it gets to be deployed, because if it's deployed, they're already at risk. So I would say more than 90% of the companies have an AppSec position in the organization. More than 50% have an actual, it's more than budget line. It's part of their risk. Their top 5 risk elements that the board are looking at are, application security is one of them.
And what are some of the biggest challenges facing application security?
It's a good question. I would say the biggest challenge today is the manual AppSec practices, that you have to do a lot of the analysis and response manually. Discovery, we already probably took care of it, but then the outputs, the visibility elements, understanding and analyzing vulnerabilities, who's the owner, who should I approach, how do I fix it, is it really critical for me, what's the effect on the business, what's the effect on the environment, collecting that context. The entire thing, the cause of it is that I need to do it manually. If I don't need to do it manually, then I can just skip to the next stage, which is the response. If I already got the response covered, now that's a big thing, because this is where companies can leapfrog years ahead, which wasn't the case, for example, in IT security, where we had to go through antiviruses and firewalls and then IPS and all the rest, collect it into a SIEM. We got the visibility, but still a lot of issues. Then we got EDR, XDR, all those areas. And one of the special things about Ox, we understood it from day one. And we've built it kind of the next generation. So we're leapfrogging into SIEM and XDR really quickly. We don't have to go through all the stages. So at this point, I would say that understanding the context of the environment, your business, the attack surface, connecting all the dots together, and providing really those few security issues that you need to fix at any given time. This, I would say, this is the main area of focus and a challenge for a lot of companies.
Absolutely. And I'm curious your take on, for the C-suite, for the executives that aren't in the daily grind of, oh, these application security processes are manually done right now. Is it fair to say to them that maturing their application security practices is dependent upon eliminating the manual processes? Or what are the other items that AUX zeroes in on as allowing maturity to come in?
So the first item is really to understand how much time does it take to fix an issue. And it starts by, when we are discovering vulnerabilities. How much time do we spend on tasks analyzing those vulnerabilities? What's the end goal? Trying to measure the friction between the security and development teams. This is also something, it's difficult. One idea that I liked, which really got a financial company huge advancements in that remediation, is they started to gamify, so create a gamification on the development teams.
Really?
On how, it's amazing. It really is amazing. And that gamification provided scores for the different engineering teams.
Okay.
And eventually they got the managers of those teams. One of their KPIs, or part of their KPIs they get bonuses on, is to be on a B or an A score.
Really?
And they were actually able to gain more traction from development to fix security issues. He told me that they were working weekends just to be the top, get to be an A position.
Yeah.
And they started bragging about it. So I think this is one of the ideas that you can do as a CISO or a C-suite in order to get people motivated into reducing your security security risk, I would say. So,
and I want to go back to that line because many times application security is handled differently than other security programs or development by the mere fact that the security is thrown back on the developers.
Right.
And that's different. That is, right? I mean,
exactly.
Will you speak on that in your experience? That's a very different mindset, that you're throwing the security requirements on the developers who, it's not necessarily what they thought they were there to do.
This is a great point, because this is one of the major differences between, I would say, application security and the rest of the security spaces, where the control remediation is at the hands of the security team. Here, the remediation eventually is on the development team. Security people can't remediate. They see the vulnerabilities, they prioritize them, they send it for developers to remediate, but eventually a developer will look at the code and say, okay, this code works. I need to finish my next task because there's another task afterwards, and we promised a customer that we release this software and so on and so forth. I don't have time to fix security vulnerabilities. And I feel that this is really challenging as well right now, as you're mentioning, but also something that separates application security from the other security markets and requires a different types of approach in that sense. So I would say a continuous approach.
A lot of gamification. What you're saying is
gamification, yeah, but also a continuous approach. I can't come to a developer with a vulnerability I spend days or weeks to analyze, and then that developer will say, well, we'll already fix that, or we've changed that, we're not using that library anymore.
Right.
So it has to be a continuous approach, it has to be real time. And I feel this is something that a lot of AUX's customers are enjoying today, as they're getting that information in real time. As developers adding new components to the code, they see that, they understand the criticality of that immediately, and they can give something for them to fix in the development phases and not later on. We're just about to release, and I can stall the release. So I'm deciding on releasing with the risk, with everything, and I'm going to fix it next release.
Fair. So, in summary, what is information you can provide to our audience about how AUX really helps the application security posture of a company? Since we discussed, you're saying 95% of companies, no matter what industry they are in,
Yes.
are also in application security. What does AUX do?
So the first thing that Aux helps to do is to eliminate manual AppSec practices.
Okay.
And what we're seeing is that the ability to provide the coverage on the entire pipeline in a single platform, collect the information, correlate it, consolidate it, understand the context of how the business operates, the development operates, the attack landscape, use Oscar and application detection and response. You can connect different tools, not just Aux's native tools. And the first thing it gives you a complete visibility on the actual risk, what are really critical aspects, and also the guided remediation. What do I do next? So technically speaking, when I build a no-code workflow, I can start responding to security issues without spending a lot of time analyzing them, opening tickets, and chasing developers. I'm also recommending a lot of organizations to, once they, for example, implement Aux, they start thinking strategically because the daily tasks are covered.
Okay.
And the evidence is there. So they don't have to continuously prove to development why it's important. We're showing we have a reachability graph, exploitability, and all of that. The next part is really thinking about how do I look at a next application I'm going to develop. What's the security elements? Plug it into Aux, of course, we'll see it automatically. And through the development, we're starting to analyze everything. Mm-hmm. So as you're developing the application, even before it released, you understand what's the expected criticality of specific elements. We are also deprioritizing a lot of elements. So we're creating a cleaner view, reducing a lot of the noise and aspects. And eventually, we're allowing the security team to start focusing on those strategic aspects, building frameworks that will create a better ROI for the business. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing a lot with companies that we work with is that every time you integrate security into the pipeline, there is a reduction in the velocity of development. With Aux, that reduction is almost non-existent, and then the development growth is actually faster than what they're expecting. So we're seeing Aux as a business catalyst and helping a lot of businesses that use Aux to actually expedite their application, reduce the risk, and eventually become more competitive in the market.
And that's not just on the initial offering or the initial release, but also on subsequent releases.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's a continuous over time, and you're releasing on a daily basis, and you want to know exactly what I'm releasing, the kind of risk it creates, and if something needs to be, held, then I want to know as soon as possible and not at the end of the process or after it was released. For example, we're able to correlate a lot of the container issues to code issues. Okay. So we immediately know when a container is built. Of course, we'll see it in code, but we'll see it also in a container, and then automatically linked it to the relevant person. A ticket will open, they'll fix it, they'll build a new container, and that's it. So it's really amazing the path that we can take here.
It does. It sounds like a lot of streamlining.
Yes.
Yes. Beautiful. Boaz, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So to continue with us today, you will be able to see our closing for Black Hat. And to find out more about Aux Security, please visit securityweekly.com/AuxSecurityBH. If you can't stick around for the rest of the live stream, or if you are catching this afterwards, please head over to securityweekly.com/Black Hat to find all of the Black Hat coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance.